Hey everyone, welcome back to Full Spectrum Frontiers. I'm your host Bennett Tanton, and today we're going to take a deep dive into a hotspot that's heating up in a big way, but maybe not the one you think. While headlines are usually buzzing about Eastern Europe and the Indo-Pacific right under our noses, our own hemisphere is becoming a real battlefield of influence. Now you might be thinking, hold up Bennett, we already have our hands full with global issues. Why should I care about what's happening down south? Here's the deal. As we stay entangled in these far-off arenas, powers like China and Russia are quietly and steadily embedding themselves in Latin America, our own backyard. They're investing big bucks, forming alliances, and shifting the balance in ways that could seriously impact us here in the States. So in today's episode, we'll break down why Latin America is a rising geopolitical arena, why foreign influence there matters for U.S. security and stability, and, most importantly, how the U.S. can counter these moves by building strong, genuine partnerships with our neighbors. We'll cover what's really going on, who's behind it, and lay out a few strategies to put the focus back on what could be one of our most powerful alliances right here in the Western Hemisphere. And here's the kicker. We're going to look at this optimistically. Yes, we'll get real about the risks, but by the end of this episode, I think you'll see this as a huge opportunity for the U.S. to make some bold moves, strengthen our region, and set ourselves up for a stronger, more secure future. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's jump into the big picture with all its bright spots, and a few shadows too. And hey, if you're enjoying Full Spectrum Frontiers, don't forget to like, share, and leave a review. Your support helps us keep bringing these discussions to the forefront and gets more people thinking about these critical issues. All right, let's dive in. Let's start by painting a picture here, one that's probably not getting nearly enough attention in the mainstream chatter. While we've been keeping a steady eye on regions like Eastern Europe and the Indo-Pacific, China and Russia have been quietly making moves south of our border. Now, I'm not talking about a few handshake deals and photo ops. This is a full court press, folks. And it's a lot deeper than a few diplomats cutting ribbons at new ports. Let's zoom out for a moment. Imagine Latin America as a major intersection on the global map. It's rich in natural resources, lithium, copper, oil, you name it. It's a strategic route for trade and logistics, and it's also a massive consumer market. Now you've got China and Russia seeing this value and moving in with a game plan that would make most Fortune 500 companies envious. The investments? They're not just piling cash into one or two places. It's spread across ports, highways, tech infrastructure, and resource development. China, for example, has been busy signing countries up for its Belt and Road Initiative. Yes, the same project that has Asia, Africa, and parts of Europe tied up in a web of Chinese-built infrastructure. And Russia? Well, while their investment isn't as flashy or widespread as China's, they're honing in on what they do best: strategic alliances in energy and military. Just take Venezuela, for instance. Russia's in deep with military support, oil deals, and let's just say a cozy diplomatic relationship. Now, on the surface, it might sound like just some heavy investments, maybe even an economic boost for these countries. But if you dig deeper, there's a very clear power play in the works. These nations are gaining serious influence in our backyard. And here's the kicker. If these moves keep accelerating, the political and security balance in Latin America could start looking a lot different in the next decade or so, with Latin American leaders potentially leaning eastward when it comes to their economic and security priorities. So, why does this matter for us? Well, first, let's think about the ripple effect here. For one, we're talking about countries that sit right on our doorstep, handling resources and routes that affect us directly. The more influence China and Russia have in these nations, the less leverage we have to ensure that Latin America's stability aligns with U.S. interests. And that's just the beginning. If the political landscape shifts toward Beijing or Moscow, it becomes easier for adversarial influence to creep into areas that directly impact U.S. security, trade routes, and our access to resources that fuel our industries. Let's not forget the less tangible yet critical aspect of influence itself. If China and Russia win hearts and minds in Latin America, they're not just gaining allies, they're shaping the narrative about global power. They're subtly showing that they're willing to support these countries without a lot of the strings the U.S. traditionally attaches. In other words, we'll help build your roads and bridges, and we won't ask too many questions. That's an attractive proposition for any leader tired of Western bureaucracy or demands for transparency. So, when we talk about this new power dynamic, it's not just about who's putting up the money or building the infrastructure. It's about who's steering the ship in Latin America. As of now, the U.S. is still in the driver's seat, but if we're not careful, if we continue to take this region for granted, our influence could slip away faster than we realize. All right, I'll pause here because this is where things start to get really interesting. Up next, we're going to dig into the economic strategies that are putting China and Russia right on the Latin American map and what this means for the future of the region's resources and, by extension, ours. So stick with me. Now that we've set the stage with the big players moving in, let's dig into the economics at play here. Because this isn't just about handing out contracts or building highways, it's about who controls the future of Latin America's resources and economies. And right now, China and Russia are taking some bold steps to ensure they're the ones holding those keys. Let's start with China, the heavyweight investor. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, China's been actively investing in Latin America's infrastructure, ports, railways, energy plants, even telecommunications. There's a whole web of Chinese-funded projects that are transforming the landscape. And here's the deal. These aren't just random acts of kindness. China's not writing blank checks out of goodwill. They're creating leverage points. By funding and building critical infrastructure, China's securing its own access to Latin America's rich natural resources, resources like lithium, copper, and oil, which are essential for everything from smartphones to electric vehicles. Why does this matter? Think of it this way. When you control the infrastructure that transports goods, powers cities, and connects people, you don't just have a stake in the economy, you're in the driver's seat. You influence the terms of trade, the flow of resources, and even local politics to an extent. And the more economically dependent these countries become on China, the harder it becomes for the U.S. to pull them back into our sphere of influence. And it's not just about roads and rails. China's also putting money into Latin American tech and telecommunications sectors, particularly 5G. Huawei, the Chinese telecom giant, is already making headway in multiple Latin American countries, building out the digital infrastructure that will carry the region's data and communication in the years to come. This could have significant implications for data security and sovereignty. Let's face it, if another country is building and possibly even monitoring your communications infrastructure, that's a whole new level of influence. Now, Russia's approach has been a bit different. They don't have China's economic muscle, but they've been focusing on energy and military partnerships where they know they can have a big impact. Venezuela is a prime example. Russia's heavily involved in the Venezuelan oil sector, essentially propping up the industry in exchange for a reliable oil supply and influence over a key Latin American player. Russia has also been providing military training and support to certain regimes, which not only solidifies political alliances, but also creates dependencies on Russian military expertise and hardware. That's a relationship that isn't easy to walk away from. But here's where things get tricky. These investments, particularly from China, often come with some steep terms. Many Latin American countries are taking on substantial debt to finance these projects, and if they can't pay it back, China has the right to take over certain assets or extend its control in other ways. It's debt trap diplomacy, plain and simple. These countries are gambling that the short-term benefits will outweigh the long-term costs, but that's a risky bet, especially in nations where economies are often volatile. So, where does this leave the U.S.? Well, if we're serious about countering these moves, we can't just stand on the sidelines and watch. There's a real opportunity here to offer an alternative. We can create economic partnerships that actually benefit both sides, investments that don't sink our neighbors in debt or come with hidden agendas. The U.S. has the chance to lead with a different approach, one that's grounded in respect for sovereignty and fair trade. But we've got to act, and soon. The longer we wait, the deeper the roots China and Russia put down. In the next section, we'll dive into the security risks that come along with this economic leverage, because when foreign powers control critical infrastructure and resources, it's only a matter of time before that economic influence bleeds into the security realm. Stick around, because this is where things start to get a bit unnerving. All right, so we've covered how China and Russia are getting their hands in Latin America's economic cookie jar, but let's talk about the real kicker here: security. When foreign powers control key economic assets, they don't just get leverage over trade or resources. They gain an avenue into national security. And in a region as close to home as Latin America, that's a serious concern for the United States. Here's where it gets unsettling. Think about the potential spillover from this economic influence. When countries grow economically dependent on foreign powers like China and Russia, they're often more inclined to accommodate those powers in their military and intelligence strategies. We're already seeing signs of this. China has invested heavily in port infrastructure across the region, and in some cases they're securing exclusive access or favorable terms for the use of these ports. And these aren't just commercial ports we're talking about. Some of them have dual use potential, meaning they could support military logistics if push came to shove. Russia, meanwhile, has been cozying up to Latin American militaries, especially in places like Venezuela and Nicaragua. They're not only selling arms and providing training, but embedding themselves in ways that could influence regional security dynamics. The presence of Russian advisors or trainers creates a bond that makes it much harder for these countries to pull away from Moscow's orbit. It's a bit like the fox guarding the henhouse. And let's not forget cybersecurity. With China's Huawei rolling out 5G infrastructure, we're looking at a whole new layer of vulnerability. If Chinese companies control Latin America's digital backbone, they have unprecedented access to data and communications. Now, I'm not saying that China's going to start eavesdropping on every WhatsApp chat south of the border, but think of it this way. If you control the network, you're in a position to monitor, influence, and even disrupt. For the U.S., that's a serious risk, not only for commercial data, but for sensitive government and military communications as well. Now, here's where it gets even more complicated. If China and Russia become the go-to partners for Latin American countries when it comes to security and intelligence, the U.S. could find itself shut out of strategic partnerships in its own hemisphere. Imagine a scenario where critical intelligence is no longer shared with the U.S. because our neighbors are more aligned with Beijing or Moscow. It sounds far-fetched, but it's closer than you'd think. Trust and intelligence sharing are the backbone of security alliances, and once that trust shifts, it's hard to win back. All this means that the stakes are high. We're not just talking about a loss of influence, we're talking about potential blind spots in our own security framework. The U.S. has long benefited from a secure, cooperative neighborhood in the Western Hemisphere, but if we allow this foreign influence to grow unchecked, we risk losing that buffer, and we could end up facing security challenges right on our own doorstep. So, what's the takeaway here? The U.S. can't afford to be reactive. We need a proactive approach that reinforces our partnerships in Latin America, one that doesn't just assume loyalty based on geography or history. It's about providing real value in our security relationships, building trust, and showing our neighbors that we're here as allies, not overlords. In the next segment, we'll dig into what that looks like, what it means to build a meaningful, mutually beneficial blueprint for U.S.-Latin America cooperation that actually holds up against foreign influence. All right, so we've broken down the risks and the reasons why China and Russia are making such big moves in Latin America. Now, let's get into the heart of the solution. What would it take for the U.S. to actually build a lasting, mutually beneficial relationship with our southern neighbors? And I'm talking real partnerships here, not just the check in every decade kind of approach. We need a strategic blueprint, one that's about genuine cooperation, not just influence. First off, let's start with the basics, economic partnerships that actually matter. We can't just keep expecting Latin America to stick with us out of tradition or proximity. If we want to build strong alliances, we've got to invest in a way that truly respects these countries' sovereignty and priorities. One idea is to start by targeting key sectors like infrastructure and technology. If China is rolling out roads, ports, and 5G networks, we need to be right there with competitive alternatives. This doesn't mean a replica of China's Belt and Road Initiative, but a uniquely American approach that emphasizes transparency and mutual benefit without saddling these nations with crippling debt. Think about this. A U.S.-led initiative focused on infrastructure, but built on fair trade and long-term sustainability. Roads, energy grids, digital networks, all developed with local economies and communities in mind, not just our own gain. It's a win-win that creates jobs locally and strengthens their economies without the hidden costs. And here's the kicker. By offering these countries an alternative, we help them stay independent, giving them more power to resist foreign influence. They get a stronger economy and infrastructure. We get an ally that doesn't feel trapped by debt to foreign powers. Next up, education and workforce development. This is an area where the U.S. has a lot to offer. We've got a robust system for higher education and technical training, and Latin America has a young population eager to learn. By expanding scholarship programs, technical exchanges, and workforce training partnerships, we can create a future generation in Latin America that's connected to and invested in American industries and values. This isn't just charity, it's a strategic investment. When people are educated and trained through U.S. programs, they bring that experience back to their countries. They're more likely to become leaders and innovators who value democratic principles, economic freedom, and ultimately collaboration with the U.S. Now, on to security. We need to strengthen military and law enforcement partnerships, but not in a way that comes off as meddling. Instead of just providing equipment and calling it a day, we should focus on cooperative security training, joint exercises, intelligence sharing programs, and counter-narcotics initiatives can help us build real trust with Latin American governments. And let's face it, we share a lot of common security threats, from organized crime to cyber threats to border security. By working together on these issues, we're not only protecting U.S. interests, but also showing that we genuinely care about the security of our neighbors. A key part of this blueprint has to be communication. Let's be honest. For years, Latin America has often felt like an afterthought to Washington. If we want to build partnerships that last, we need a constant open dialogue. Diplomatic presence matters, but so does cultural exchange. More town halls, more public forums, and more media collaborations that give the people of Latin America a real say in the relationship. We're not here to dictate terms. We're here to listen, learn, and build together. So what does this all add up to? A blueprint for U.S.-Latin America cooperation that goes beyond just countering foreign influence. This is about building a partnership that's resilient, adaptable, and based on shared goals. We're talking about a region where economies are interwoven, where digital and physical infrastructure are built to last, and where security is seen as a common cause. It's a vision for the future that makes Latin America not just an ally, but a partner in the fullest sense. In the final segment, we'll talk about the urgency here, why this moment right now is a critical opportunity for the U.S. to secure its position in Latin America before foreign influence becomes irreversible. Trust me, this is where the rubber meets the road, so stick around. All right, folks, we've broken down the new dynamics at play, the economic influence, security risks, and a blueprint for building real partnerships. But here's the question we've got to tackle now. Why is this so urgent? Why does the U.S. need to make moves in Latin America? And why does it need to happen right now? Let's start with a fundamental truth in geopolitics. Influence, once lost, is hard to reclaim. And while we've been focused on conflicts across the globe, other powers have taken note of the vacuum forming in our own backyard. Latin America isn't just going to stay open to our influence out of habit. The world has changed, and if the U.S. doesn't step up, other players, namely China and Russia, are more than willing to fill that gap. Every new investment, every infrastructure deal, and every security partnership they secure brings them one step closer to cementing their place in Latin America, possibly for the long haul. Here's another angle. The U.S. has traditionally benefited from a stable, cooperative hemisphere. We've had the luxury of focusing overseas, knowing that our closest neighbors largely align with our interests. But that's not guaranteed anymore. Imagine a future where our southern neighbors turn more and more to Beijing or Moscow, not just for trade, but for strategic alliances and security collaboration. This isn't some distant threat. It's something we could see within the next decade if we're not careful. And let's be real, when it comes to national security, proximity matters. Threats don't always come from across the ocean. Sometimes they emerge a lot closer to home. Timing is everything here. Latin America is at a crossroads, with many countries looking for partners who respect their sovereignty and prioritize their unique needs. This is our opportunity to step in, not as a dominating force, but as a genuine partner. We can offer a different kind of engagement, one based on collaboration rather than coercion. We're talking about creating a secure, prosperous region that's resilient against foreign manipulation. There's also an economic case to be made. Latin America's resources, like lithium for batteries, copper for electronics, and oil for energy, are critical to the global supply chain. As demand for these resources grows, so does the strategic importance of securing access to them. If the U.S. doesn't establish strong economic ties now, we could find ourselves at a disadvantage, forced to negotiate for access with countries that might be more aligned with or even dependent on foreign powers. Securing these resources isn't just about commerce. It's about ensuring that we're not outmaneuvered in the next wave of technological and industrial advances. And here's where we get real. This isn't just about the U.S. government stepping in. It's about American businesses, universities, tech firms, and civil society getting involved. Building alliances in Latin America means engaging on multiple fronts. It's not just a matter of government policy. It's about fostering educational exchanges, creating private sector partnerships, and promoting cultural connections. When Americans get involved, from students studying abroad to businesses opening up shop in Latin America, it strengthens the bond between our nations in ways that top-down government efforts can't always accomplish. So, what's the call to action here? The U.S. needs to act now. We have a narrow window to reinforce our relationships in Latin America before foreign influence becomes too entrenched. This means putting real resources behind our words, prioritizing Latin America in our policy and economic agendas, and showing up as a reliable partner. If we do this, we'll not only counteract the growing influence of foreign powers, but build a hemisphere that's resilient, prosperous, and aligned with our values. To wrap up, I'll leave you with this. Latin America isn't just a nice-to-have ally. It's a strategic necessity for a secure and stable future. The moment for action is now, and if we seize it, we can lay the foundation for a powerful alliance that benefits everyone in the region. Folks, Latin America, our own hemisphere, our own backyard, and right now, one of the most important regions in the world when it comes to securing America's future. It's clear. While the rest of the world grabs the spotlight, there's a strategic opportunity right here for the U.S. to build strong, lasting partnerships with our neighbors to the south, partnerships based on respect, shared prosperity, and common security goals. But this isn't just about politics or big picture strategy. It's about understanding that we're all connected, from the resources that power our phones and cars to the security that keeps our neighborhoods safe. By investing in these relationships, we're not just protecting U.S. interests. We're working toward a stronger, more resilient Western Hemisphere for everyone. And that's a vision worth fighting for. If today's episode got you thinking, if it sparked some questions, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're finding value in these discussions, help us keep pushing the frontier. Hit that like button, share the episode with friends, and leave a review. Your support is what keeps Full Spectrum Frontiers going strong. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, folks, true strength doesn't come from looking only outward. It starts with securing our own hemisphere. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep pushing the frontier.
It's just you, me, and the odds. We stuck together, we two peas in a pod. You dealt a bad hand, I'm there seizing the cards. We'll never be separated till we seeing the gods. We've been low together, high forever. Long as we go together, we'll die whenever. Be a light, couldn't let the darkness try you ever. Truth in my word, you I lie to never. And when the world gets a little too hard, wipe your eyes, put away your sorrow. When it's war, I'll be leading the charge, and I'll be still fighting for you tomorrow. Yeah, even with a blindfold or in different time zones, could find my way to you with my eyes closed. There's nothing between us. Go to Mars or Venus, stand in front of everyone